Hi, this is Lucas from CutSpace. In today's episode, I would like to introduce you to the basics of working with sketchbooks in NX. To simply open the sketchbook, just click Sketch in the top left corner, or Sketch in the Polish language version, easily. Next, we carefully select the specific plane that we want to work on, and then click OK. This plane automatically sets itself in the normal direction. And now we can automatically see that different sketch tools have appeared here. Besides standard tools like rectangle and circle, there is a very cool tool such as the one that I often use. This is essentially the profile tool. It is basically also located under the Z key on the keyboard. And maybe to demonstrate the difference, I'll first use the align tool, which is just a simple line to show the basic functionality of this tool. And here, if after drawing one line I want to draw another, I have to click on the endpoint again, possibly select it, and do this every time. With the help of Ctrl-Z, I'll hide these lines, undo them, and now I'll show the difference in how profile works. After clicking profile without lifting the cursor, I just need to click once, and a second line appears immediately, which I can draw. And besides that, if, for example, I now move the cursor to the right side, return to the last point, hold down the left mouse button, and then move to the right again, we can clearly see that I can draw an arc shape. I click, now I close the profile, and now we have completed the action. We see that some gray dimensions have appeared here, so by clicking on one of these dimensions, for illustration this one, I can automatically change the dimension or simply just confirm it with Enter. I just simply confirm it with Enter, and we see that this dimension has turned blue, which means it is now confirmed, as you can clearly see. Indeed. I'll change this dimension to, let's say, 220. And besides dimensioning in this way, we can also use various types of geometric constraints. For example, in this particular case, I will probably show the geometric constraints in a later episode dedicated to them, but just here at the beginning, I'll show where they are located. They are in this place or under the letter C on the keyboard. For example, if I choose the vertical geometric constraint and click on this line, we can see that a vertical symbol appears here, and this line is now parallel. Another constraint that I can use, for example, is coincident, which means that if I select this point, move to the next point, and click the origin of the coordinate system, we can see that the entire sketch has moved to the origin of the coordinate system. Here, I also have information at the bottom that sketch is fully constrained with one auto dimensions, which means that this one auto dimension is the gray dimension if we want the sketch to be fully dimensioned. I still need to confirm this dimension, let's say approximately 350 or so. I press Enter, and now we see here a message that tells us there are no more dimensions left to dimension, and we can safely close the sketch and start working on it. I can close the sketch here. Now let's say I want to create another sketch, but maybe on a different plane, for example. To make a sketch on a plane, I don't need to use coordinate systems at all. I can, for example, choose a datum plane, which is simply an auxiliary plane, and here I have many different options. For example, I can select a plane at a certain distance, meaning that when I click on this particular specific plane, it will be moved to the desired location, selected, etc. I might choose a different type, and if I want to come back here, there's a nice reset tool that resets all the settings for me. I might choose a plane on the curve. For better understanding and more precision, I need to select the curve, so let's say it will be this specific line. Here, I can also choose the direction. For example, in this case, I specifically want it to be normal. Now it is actually set to be normal to the path, which is the curve I selected above. And I can, for example, set it normal to a vector, and the vector can be, for instance, the x-axis. In this case, I can choose an offset, meaning the distance, and let it be offset by 50 millimeters or even more, like 500 millimeters. I click OK and created this plane. This plane is of course kind of infinite. I can zoom in on the preview here and expand it, but it obviously goes on infinitely. Anyway, now, for example, I can definitely, absolutely, and undoubtedly choose a sketch. Of course, I showed you a slightly more complicated way of creating this plane because I could just as well have taken a datum plane, added some distance, selected that specific plane, and then moved it. There are a lot of options for creating these auxiliary planes, so I'll probably make a dedicated episode for them later. Now, returning to the topic of the sketch. In this step, if I select the sketchbook once again, I can then choose the plane that I have just recently created right away. I can either select it easily from the model itself, or I can simply choose the option from the tree. I click OK, and now everything I create here, I know for sure that it is definitely happening on this particular plane. So for instance, I will take the circle tool, proceed to draw a circle right here on the canvas, making sure it is perfectly round, and then carefully adjust the dimension of this circle to be exactly 60 units in diameter. I can also change the dimensioning method here, whether it is radial or diametral, depending on the requirements of the design in this software. If it is here, the radius dimension on the arc is approximately 30. After closing the sketch and clicking on these blue lines, which is the sketch, we see that in the parameters, the radius dimension on arc is 30 millimeter. I click on it again, and I still have some dimensions to confirm, but I can, for example, use a geometric constraint to ensure accuracy and precision, which is essential for our design process. Using the concentric constraint, or the one we used earlier, which is coincident, selecting the first point is enough. Just click on the circle and the origin of the coordinate system, and we see how it looks. We have now created such a circle, which is cool. If I now take the extrude region boundary in the filters and extrude it, for example, here I will select preview to 80 and to roughly 80. So if I have such a plane, it is another element that I can control. For example, if I click on this plane, a parameter like the distance of this plane will appear in the details. So instead of 500, I can set it to 50. And as you can see, at this moment, the plane we are discussing has become coincident with the other plane, aligning perfectly. I'll take 80 units, so that's a total of 80 items, which should be sufficient for our needs. Ideally, these two faces now coincide. Okay, I'll go back to 50. Alright, the next plane I can create is, for example, a sketch that I can make. For example, on some face of a solid. I don't recommend this. It's better to simply choose an auxiliary plane. This way, we have more control over everything, and just add distance, even if it's 0, and then I open another sketch. I choose a rectangle, and I have several different various multiple options for making rectangles. For example, the first method is to mark 2 points on the diagonal, then return to the control panel to confirm the selection. The second method is to select 3 points, ensuring they form a triangle. The third method involves first marking the center point, then clicking or entering in the window, such as a width of 1000 units, a height of 200 units, and an angle which can be either 0 degrees or 90 degrees. Let's make it 90 degrees for this example. Additionally, you can adjust the parameters if needed to fit your specific requirements. This flexibility allows for a wide range of configurations and precise control over the final output. I simply click Escape, and the dimensions that I have already entered in this window are now confirmed. However, there are still some dimensions left. The sketch is not fully dimensioned yet, because there are those gray dimensions that are still unconfirmed. Another cool thing that I will show you right away is the arc, and here we have two options, either an arc from the center or an arc from 3 points. The 3-point arc works in such a way that it's best to choose the middle point at the very end. Let's say I choose a point on the line here. If you can't select a point, always check the filters. If you can't select a point on the line, it means the filter is unchecked. Here, I can select it, so I click, and now I click the last point. You can see that even the coincident constraint is activated here. I click the third point. And now here I have a tangent constraint. I can also add this tangent constraint on the other side, which is tangent to the tangent constraint. I click the arc, move to the other place on the other side, which is tangent. I click the arc, move to the other place. I click OK. We see that it is now tangent on both sides. I can still dimension it, let's say 150. I have this trim option which is right here. I can just simply go over it. I'll add a geometric constraint, so I press C on the keyboard or in the geometric language. And I want to, and let's say assume that, I don't know, I'm wondering which node I could perhaps use. For example, to place a point on the curve, right? So, for instance, I would like this point moving down here to be on the y-axis, and it will be automatically and seamlessly moved. I can easily do the same with a point on the curve with this point and the z-axis. And we see that here too. I have the information sketch is fully constrained, as you can see. And now when I close the sketch, when I click on it, I also have all the parameters in the details, and I can change them here. For example, I can change the radius, so I don't need to go into it. Alright, I think that's everything for today. We'll probably return to the sketcher in the next episodes. Thanks a lot and feel free to subscribe to our channel. Bye.